And we're live. This is Dancing Dragons Live episode number 4. Welcome to the show. We've got 6 coaches at Dancing Dragons here to entertain you. Jody is our special guest, Coach Jody. We'll introduce the topic soon. I'm CEO, founder of Dancing Dragons, Coach Alex. And Deep is our other coach, and he'll introduce himself next.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Deep, short for Deep, and I'm a good friend of Alex, and we're super excited that you're joining us on this journey of ours, and super excited to be talking to you and taking your questions and engaging with everyone's thoughts.
Yeah,
awesome.
Turbit. I'm a coach here, one of the founding coaches. I'm actually going to segue this perfectly to Elijah, but one of the things I like about the show, and if you're just joining, make sure you hit the like button, helps us with the algorithm, give us a comment, that helps us out too, share the video. But we break down some philosophical topics, but we also make it really practical. And with that, I'll kind of transition to Elijah so he can give us a little bit of a brief introduction himself, but also kind of an overview of what we're doing here as a company.
You know, that was probably one of the best compliments I ever received, was somebody saying that practicality was a good segue to me. That is something I strive for, is practical applications of this stuff. So that's good. I don't even think he did that on purpose. I don't know. But are we live? Oh, okay. That's okay. We'll cut that in post. Anyway, my name's Elijah. I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at Dancing Dragons. Dancing Dragons is a brand new coaching collective. You can go check us out at dancingdragons.cc. This is Dancing Dragons Live, our weekly live video where you can get real facts from real coaches about real topics that affect your real life. And with that, I'll send it over to Jody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jody, and I am a self-empowerment and joy coach. I use laughter in my sessions, and I help to empower people. And you're next, Rhoda.
And that is a silky segue to me, because I do something with purposeful and attuned play. I work with creativity and leadership skills and speaking skills, et cetera, et cetera. And I am also the Chief Experience Officer for Dancing Dragons. So if you guys are not having a good time, the buck stops here.
And so, yeah,
Alex, yeah.
And Jody, since you are our guest of honor on your maiden voyage with us today, why don't you give us a brief introduction of the topic and maybe your thesis, and we can pass it along to the panel to get their thoughts.
Sure. So I was wondering if having...
Can you guys hear her?
Yes.
Okay, because I cannot. Okay, sorry.
You want me to talk louder? I was wondering if why people set rigid boundaries and cut people off rather quickly. And I'm wondering if it's because they have a very high sense of themselves, a high self-esteem, or if it's actually a low self-esteem and they're protecting themselves. So
that's interesting. So I was in my preparation, as I like to do, right? I was trying to look up some statistics on this. I first got introduced to this topic, and it was referred to as defooing or family of origining, right? And so I wanted to look it up, and there's not a whole lot of studies about it, which is interesting. So there was a study back in 2014 that was mostly based in the UK. And it said about 1 in 10 people have cut off a family member, right? And then they said that there were similar numbers reported out of the United States, but they didn't have a whole lot of information. A more recent study in 2020 claimed that over 25%, maybe around 27% of people in the United States have cut off a family member, right? Which seems very high to me. And they said that the average age that people have started cutting off family members is 23, which seems pretty young to me, right? So if you're saying like 1 out of 4 people, on average, cut off family members at 23 years old, it does seem pretty premature. And so I would probably lean towards it's most commonly done out of insecurity, to answer your question directly. But I'll send it over to whoever wants to answer. Rona, I guess, has her hand up.
Yes, I'm trying to be polite. So yeah. So I just thinking about. I was thinking a little larger. I am not a millennial. I will just say that. And for my generation, I think it's more from fear and control. We set boundaries, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, that we're afraid to be vulnerable. So that boundary, that wall comes up because we don't want to give things away, whether we're insecure because we want to pretend to be the smartest person in the room. We don't want to hear other people's opinions. That's why I think a lot of boundaries go up. Then again, for things like dating or, knowing, what's the expression, you become like the 5 or 7 people you hang out with. Why would you want to allow people who are negative or who don't necessarily agree with your lifestyle or viewpoint? Why would you want to hang out with them anyway? So that would be a boundary where you might cut them off because you're not making me happy. And happiness is what we're all going for, right? And I think that's where boundaries we need to realize that boundaries are because we want to be happy. And the opposite of happiness isn't sadness, it's fear, I think. Or is that love? And same thing.
That's I have a comment on that, but I can hold my tongue until I'm
Go ahead,
ready.
Al. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can. This is a great topic. It's not. There's different types of boundaries. There's different types of relationships. There's different scenarios. I tend to agree with what Coach Rona just said, which is sort of like a defense and aggressive. Defense and offense is sometimes the same. It's sort of like a dominance play to have boundaries. When you set boundaries, it's usually a dominance move. You're saying, look, I don't need you. Like literally, I don't need you. Stay this far away from me. And so I see it as self-protection and dominance. They are different. Sometimes it's truly self-protection, right? When you're being chased down the street by someone who's trying to like harm you, you're setting a boundary by running away. That's not a dominance move. That's a move, a self-protection mechanism. So we have to separate the dominance plays from the merely self-protection. They are different, right? It's not the same. But I think what Rona said was true. A lot of boundary setting is a dominance move. It's almost like saying, look, I don't really need you, especially not right now. So I'm going to keep you at arm's length, and I'm going to only give you so much information. I'm going to only give you this, that, and kind of keep you at arm's length because, it's a control. It's a control thing. It's a dominance thing. But there are plenty of cases where people learn, look, I got to protect myself here. So I'm not going to be too open. I'm not going to give you too much information. I'm not going to give you too much time or sacrifice too much of myself because I've been hurt before and I'm trying to protect myself. So they are different. So we have to, it's not all the same psychology, but that's my 2 cents for the moment.
Deep, what's your take?
Hey man, so from my understanding of boundary setting, specifically with the new generation, my thoughts are that it's quite complex, and if we look at statistics, so this 23-year-old age group that has a persistence to detach themselves from their families, I mean, that can be explained with the larger number of people that are moving around now, right? So migration, people are moving around. Look at people getting into education that are cross state. So naturally, people are not going to want to tie themselves to places where, You know, like look how Americans, I mean, like coming from a different country, Americans aren't as tied to places as much as the rest of the world, right? So people are a little bit more transient. So that might be a reason why people just don't feel obligated to stay home. Also, the disintegration of the family unit, right? So there's no reason for a child to go back home now. Before there was like support structures and you know there was benefits, right? And I'm sure there's other parts of the world. I mean, I can attest to this, right? The family, you know, supports the child or whoever goes away from home, and there's always that home available afterwards. I've seen in my experience in 15 years in this country, that's not the case. Often people leave home and there's no home available for them afterwards, you know. So I think there's a lot to play here. And as far as boundaries, I think again, like you know, I would consider boundary setting akin to a bottle of water, right? You've only got so much water in the bottle. You can't poke holes at every corner, right? You got to know how much you can give. So having boundaries gives you the ability to control. I mean, now again, we got to assume that the person's a giving person, right? So when you're a type of person that likes to give, having boundaries allows them to have built stability, control, not because they're selfish, but because they want to give and they want to be able to give as much as they possibly can. So to not counter that argument, Rona, I think not everything's territorial. Not everything's about like, you know, me. Sometimes people set boundaries because they want to be able to do a lot and they don't have the time and the capacity. So having different relationships. So from example, I mean, I have family members, I have old friends, new friends, and I wish I could give them my arm and leg and time, right? But I can't. So I have to set boundaries, you know, like with my family, like, you know, how much can I spend talking to them on the weekend when I've only got a little bit of time? You know, how much time can I spend with my friends? And so I don't think it's always necessarily a bad thing. You know, I think, you know, setting boundaries allows for you to focus on things that are important to you. You know, at any given time that might change. So if you don't have boundaries, and you know, Alex, you can attest to this, the world just like jumps on you, right? So it gets overwhelming. So that's my 2 cents. Well,
Yeah, very well said, Hardeep. And so I want to kind of throw this back to Jody and let her steer the ship. This is her topic, get a little more in depth. I did want to ask you a little bit about, too, why you think, if you agree with Elijah and think it is because of insecurity, and also why do you think the rate in the United States, I think Hardeep made some good points about some of the external factors that may be at play here and why it's maybe more prevalent in the United States. And just my quick 2 cents is I kind of agree and disagree with the lot of you. And unfortunately, Coach Jody, my apologies. I couldn't hear you speak at the beginning, so I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this. But yeah, I think boundaries are different things at different times. And I think boundaries are about establishing joy because I tried to live when I first moved out of my mom's with a friend in a studio apartment to save money. And we found out real quick you have to set up some boundaries. Otherwise, there's not going to be any freedom or joy. But yeah, the questions are why, and Elijah, before Elijah, yeah, go ahead, I'll jump in, Elijah, but let's definitely delve into, let her steer the ship and find out why, if she agrees with the insecurity or not, and why it seems to be more prevalent in the United States.
Just a quick word on boundaries. I mean, boundaries can be very healthy and they can also be very unhealthy. It depends on what boundaries you're setting and with whom, right? So like, for instance, there was like this old thing I saw on social media somewhere, I don't know, but I thought it hit pretty hard, where it was like respect can mean 2 things. Respect can mean to like respect somebody as like an authority figure, as a superior, and respect can also just mean to respect somebody as like another person, another human being. And some people will say, if you don't respect me, then I won't respect you. And what they actually mean is, if you don't treat me like an authority figure, then I won't treat you like a person, right? And it's just not okay, right? And so that's the kind of boundary that is completely unhealthy. And if somebody's trying to set that kind of a boundary, there should probably be, for their own good, some sort of intercession, right? Now, like I personally, I look at everything through ethics. I don't believe a person can be happy or fulfilled if they're living unethically. And so if you're setting these kinds of what I would call unethical boundaries, then you're setting yourself up for failure. It's not even just yeah, sure, you can be damaging to the people around you, but even if you're just looking at a purely selfish standpoint, you should still try to not live like that because it's going to be bad for you in the long run. So I just wanted to say that about boundaries because boundaries can be very, very good. They can also be very bad depending on what the boundaries are. Go ahead, Jody.
Well, yeah, and I think talking about like forgiveness and having grace for somebody else. I'm coming with this question or to this question from a personal perspective, without giving away too much information. My dad, who is 90, was cut off by his grandchildren recently. And the boundary is so rigid. They haven't even told him what they haven't liked about his behavior recently. And that's where I'm kind of stuck. It's like, why is the conversation lost in this?
Yeah, let me jump in real quick. I think a lot of the politics in this country is very divisive. We have a political system that's very much a two-party system, and that's a whole different can of worms. But that's been a lot of, for lack of a better word, a lot of the boomer generation has been cut off by their kids for politics, which is a really bad outcome. And hopefully the country and the culture will heal from that over time. But a lot of damage has been done the last 5-10 years, and it's been ugly, and we should acknowledge that. But the other thing I was going to say, I like Jody's message of the kind of reversing this. It sounds like she almost wants, and I don't want to speak for her too much, but sounds like she's almost trying to reverse that trend of creating this artificial or encouraging so much boundary setting that it's counterproductive. I spent a lot of time in South America in the last 2 years. The culture is very different. The culture in South America is frankly much less affected by social media and internet culture. It still is affected, right? It's inevitable, but it's just less so. And the togetherness that's cliche about South America, it lives on. It's like there's much more social activity here. Everything is a little bit more tighter knit. And in Christmas, so if you rewind 4 months ago, right? 4 months ago wasn't that long ago. So around December 5th, I was in a South American city and I saw a billboard, and the billboard really left an impression. It's one of the most memorable billboards I ever saw. And it said, it might have been sponsored by, I don't know. I don't know who sponsored it, but it said, share, love, forgive, or something like that. And when it's these big letters, and it was like so uncapitalist, it wasn't selling anything. It was literally a message of positivity. Maybe it was sponsored by a church, but you wouldn't know it because there was no big logo or anything. It just said forgiveness was a big thing, but sharing your time, sharing food. There in South America, you do fight over money, you fight over everything. But there's a sense that we need each other, and so we have to resolve this. We can't just let it get worse. So
to let you know that billboard was sponsored by BlackRock and Vanguard.
Probably share, I mean they want us to fight because individually we probably spend more money than if we were together. Families can pool money. So I do think that the divisiveness is in a way, if you go way upstream, it's monetized. But
and not to go down this rabbit hole too far, but I wonder how much the difference in religiosity plays a difference in those cultures, right? So perhaps that mentality is more based on, and again, even if you're looking at religion from a secular standpoint here, going to the same church every single week is just something that builds camaraderie, right? It's just, if you're sitting next to your neighbors every single week for an hour, right, and holding hands and singing together, you're going to be closer than if you don't do that. I mean, that's just common sense.
That's true. Yeah.
And it's okay. Let's get deep in. But then after deep, and then Rona, we're going back to Jody because this is she didn't answer any. She didn't get to answer any of the questions. I wanted to delve into this so she could break it down a little. But yeah, you guys get your points first, deep, and then you, Rona. Please take it down.
Yeah. Sorry, Rona, and sorry, Jody, to like just stample on your thoughts. But I wanted to just divvy up on that thought, Elijah. I think, yeah, absolutely. So part of the family structure was the Sunday church, right? And that's not only the Christian church. I mean, like most church. I mean, other than the Jewish. I mean, actually, I wouldn't speak on the other faiths, but I know for sure that my faith was always celebrated on a Sunday. And when I moved to the West Coast, I actually went to the Christian church with, a senior couple. So for that generation, the church has been a pillar, right? It was what kept the families together, but simultaneously, it's what's caused the rift as well. It's the fact that the church or the institution has been forcing kids in a way that maybe they don't want to go, right? So it's caused that kind of pushback, So you were saying, Jody, about this generation having boundaries. Yeah, like this generation doesn't drink, I've learned. This generation is experimenting more with sexualities because the previous generation have been like telling them what to do. So it's like these boundaries work in both ways, right, Elijah?
Yeah, and just quick thing, actually, this young generation is actually the least sexual of all time, statistically speaking. But yeah, Rona, what are your thoughts on this? And then we're going to let the expert in this situation dance around and improvise, do a little freestyle there. So yes, Rona, but yeah, you're always got thoughts. So what's your take on this?
So I'm looking at a totally different view, a very secular view of the kids in their 20s don't have enough emotional intelligence to be, I'm not saying they're not smart or they don't have emotions, although the more emotions are involved, the less intelligent people tend to be. I think it's an oxymoron. They have no communication skills because they are on social media. They don't know how to have a live discussion and they don't want to deal with it. Look, and I'm a little old school. I'm a Gen Xer. So I was brought up, I am not a digital native. I'm great at speaking to people face to face. This younger generation they don't know how to discuss. And I think that's where a lot of the fear comes in, because they don't know how to speak to other generations about things, about their emotions. I don't know how self-aware they are to be able to voice that well enough so you don't have these discords between family members. It doesn't have to be, well, we're just not speaking. They know what they did. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're not self-aware enough. Perhaps you have to say, do you know you did this and it hurt my feelings? Can we talk about it? Oh, talk about the concept. That's my
and
story.
just to co-stamp that real quick is my little sister. She moved in with me when she was 17. She's 25 now, right? So she's this younger generation, maybe on the elder side of it, but still part of this younger generation. They just hanging out with her and her friends. They have extreme social anxiety. I had to coach my sister into asking somebody at the sandwich shop to rewrap her sandwich when it was time to go, because she was too nervous to do it, right? But another time, I remember she was working. She had been working at this place for 3 years. Maybe, yeah, 3 years. This wasn't even that long ago. She's a bartender, but they put her at a sandwich shop. The owner of the bar bought a sandwich shop, and he was like, "You're going to make sandwiches now." And she's like, "I never signed up to make sandwiches," right? She was not happy at all. She was making less money, and so she called me up crying. She's like, "You got to come pick me up." Even though she had her car there, she needed me to go there as emotional support. So I go to the sandwich shop and I was like, "Okay, that's fine. We can just leave," right? But she never even told the boss, I don't want to work here, because she had too much social anxiety to do that. And then after we fled together, the boss called her 2 days later and was like, "Oh, okay, you don't have to work at the sandwich shop anymore. You can just be a bartender if you want." But it's this generation, they have a real hard time with confrontation. And I think that social media does have a lot to do with it. So
I wouldn't even call that confrontation. It's a conversation. They just don't know how to broach any kind of subjects, and it's just a social skill that they were not brought up on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so to all you Zoomers out there, we apologize for boom splaining all over you. All right, this next part is going to be way better. We're going to get it
in the nicest possible way.
We're gonna, we were all kind of. I mean, that's what happens,
I love the term boom splaining. I'm a millennial, by the way. Like, I'm 2 generations away from boomer. Like, this is wild.
It's hard not to talk down to the younger generations, but we have to always. It always has to be that way. So
exactly. It does.
Back in my day, yeah.
But the good news is we have a very intelligent person here who's going to kind of break it down a little more and then give us some solutions. So yeah, Jody, we threw about 50,000 questions. Any ones you can remember, and then if not, just give us the overall gist of this.
Bring us back to center. I think Jody had the topic. She can come back with her original thesis again, just in different words. But go ahead, Jody.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys all brought up really good points, and I wasn't really considering the fact that this new generation does have social anxiety because they were brought up with social media. That was something that I have to keep reminding myself of. Likewise, I think the older generation also has some anxiety about confrontation. Yeah, that's my experience. I am kind of lost in my thought for a second. So somebody help me.
What you originally said, I thought was interesting, which was, you're talking about your grandfather and the boundary set there, and that you found you were trying to process that, and that's an open question, right? Well, nobody knows, none of us know why that happened, but his kids kind of canceled their grandfather, or their dad rather, right? So they canceled their dad. That's this cancel culture stuff is real, and that's sort of like, it's almost like there's a difference between ostracizing someone from a group versus setting boundaries. There are differences, but it's all, to me, a lot of it is control, and
And I do like. Sorry, Alex. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
I do like what Rona said, which is, we're put here to be happy. And that does resonate with me. However, part of being happy is also making other people happy. And by cutting people off and canceling them, you're actually completely disregarding the people on the other end of that. So it's a tough topic. And for me, I like to just take it all on individual basis. But this conversation is helpful just to kind of, like you guys said, to break it down, to figure out like why. Maybe that's the big question. Why?
Well, yeah, let me.
Well, oh, go ahead.
I was first by a millisecond, so I'll take that one. I'll make it short. So my opinion is that yes, social media right now, it's trendy for the last 3 years to teach people how to set boundaries, because a lot of society has gotten this idea that there's toxic people and toxic whatever has pervaded the culture. So it's like, now we're teaching people how to set boundaries. We're teaching people how to say no, how to say no, how to say no. How do you say yes, right? We should be teaching people how to say yes more, and teaching people how to connect more, and teaching people how to trust more, and how to build strong connections. Because just teaching people how to say no, just teaching people how to set up a wall and a boundary is not going to further society. It's going to make it, in some cases, better, but in the long run, it doesn't do enough. Teaching people only to set boundaries. In order to function as humans, you need trust, you need connection, you need teamwork, all these things. And with just boundary setting is not sufficient to make this, to make anything work. So whether it's a 2-person relationship or any group of people, you have to have trust. And so social media has found it very easy to make all these videos about shutting people out of your life, whether it's your parents or your ex or your even your children or whatever, like friends. That's useful sometimes, but in the long run, we need to teach how to make connection. And yes, you can teach people how to make connection with coaching, but it's almost seems like it's easier for people how to teach how to set boundaries. And that might be, I don't know if that's true, if people agree, but I'll stop there. I think Elijah wanted to say something.
Yeah, I definitely think that setting proper boundaries in time, like that old phrase, a stitch in time saves nine. Now we're really playing for the boomers, but yeah, like that probably means absolutely nothing to younger people. But that means that like back in the day when people used to sew holes in clothes, we used to do that by hand. And so if there was a tiny hole, if you just put one stitch in it, it would stop the hole from getting bigger. And that way you don't have to put 10 stitches. You only need to put one. So a stitch in time saves nine. That was like the old phrase. But anyway, I digress. So I wasn't alive, by the way, when people hand sewed clothing. So that's just, it's a fossil from my parents. But anyway, I digress. So I kind of wanted to steer this kind of in a slightly different direction because we've talked a lot about maybe like the reasons why, the psychology behind it, perhaps that kind of stuff. What about people that are watching this that are kind of like thinking about maybe cutting somebody off and they don't want to, or maybe they want to and they haven't done it yet or something. So maybe we could like kind of give some thoughts on that kind of process. Now, me personally, this is like the October surprise or like the fourth act twist here, but like I actually did cut off a family member, and I'm not going to say which one, but I did it when I was 22 years old. So I was younger than average, according to the study.
You fit the statistics very closely.
Yeah. Right. Now, here's the thing, right? I did not take it lightly at all. I've never, anybody I've ever told about this situation has never even questioned my reasons, right, for doing it, right? With that said, it didn't stick. And I think I kind of grew to realize that you don't need to just turn off the TV if it's too loud. You can turn down the volume, right? And you can you can distance yourself without just cutting it off. And to tell somebody, well, now you're cut off is kind of aggressive and almost unnecessary, right? So there are certain circumstances where it might be appropriate, of course, but I think those are probably pretty rare. You can healthily distance yourself from somebody that you feel like has a negative effect on your life. And I'm not saying that you should never cut somebody off. I would never say that. I definitely think that there are plenty of situations where it's important to control who you associate with, right? There are very few things you can control in your life, and who you associate with is one of them. And that's very important to control that. But you don't need to be so aggressive as to cut people off. And I want to go through a couple of statistical things here. So, like the studies I said before was like 1 in 10 from 2014 and now over 25% in 2020. And again, this is now since COVID and the 2020 election, the 2024 election, I'm sure those numbers are through the roof. Now, instead of having weirdos on YouTube talking about defooing and cutting off family members, now we have people on MSNBC telling people that they shouldn't see their parents on the holidays if they voted for the wrong person, right? So, we live in a totally different world. So I'm sure these numbers are drastically different and they haven't been studied. But the mental health outcomes have been studied a little bit as well. And again, these are older studies from 2020, but it's saying that around 60 to 70% of people that cut off family members reported having better mental health afterwards. Now, again, this is self-reporting. Obviously, in this kind of situation, you can expect numbers to be a little skewed due to self-righteousness. Like they're talking about cutting off a family member, and they're like, yeah, I am better off without them, right? So you can imagine those numbers are probably pretty heavily skewed. Also, anytime you're talking about studies in this day and age, it's important to bring up the fact that we are in the middle of a replication crisis, which means that 70% of scientific studies cannot be replicated, which means they are not science. So take every kind of study with a grain of salt. We are in the middle of that replication crisis. It's not just the soft sciences. Chemistry studies, 76% cannot be replicated. So good luck. But anyway, I digress. So, but 20 to 30% of people report being worse off mentally after cutting off the family member. And this is back in 2020. And I'm sure more people have been cutting off family members. And like anything, you have like the law of diminishing returns. So I think that we're probably well past the healthy number of people that actually need to cut off family members. And we're really getting into like the excess amount of like cutting off people too much too quickly. And so I'm sure that those negative mental health outcomes have probably been exacerbated. So anyway, what are you guys' thoughts on that information? I know I said a lot. My bad.
Deep, let's lead us off over here, bro.
Yeah. So, I mean, not trying to sort of sell my day job, but like my day job is basically understanding like new science and new technology and if it's going to go anywhere. So like, you know, every new biotech to every new technology, it needs to be vetted, right? And from my experience, most companies that think that they're going to get like a drug or something out there, very, very, very few of those companies will ever succeed. In fact, it takes up to 15 years for someone who's got a great idea for their drug or their technology to even reach market. And that's 15 years. So imagine that. Right now, there's cures, if you want to use the word cure, to many cancers, many rare diseases that those patients are not going to see for 15 years. Right, and that's just because the entanglement of this country, right? So, you know, you want to talk about like the system here. It's like it is horrendous. Like it's a numbers game. It is a numbers game. The health system, the country's health is beset upon money, on insurers, on payers. Who's going to make more money on who's getting sick? You know, there's over, I think, 400,000 rare diseases. Every day there's a new rare disease because it's like $500,000 for big pharma to make money out of. So you're in a country where there's a lot of greed, right? People are using data, replicating data. That's my previous job as well, selling data. And why do they do that, right? Because money, right? Getting kids hooked on nicotine was money. Getting kids hooked on ADD, ADHD, it's all a ploy, right? You know, I don't think it's gonna ever stop because when someone suffers, someone is at advantage, and in a capitalist system, the person who's making money is gonna be at advantage, right? And to Alex's point, we need more kindness because right now, why are we creating boundaries? Why are these kids creating boundaries? Because you got quote unquote pussy grabbers, right? You got those people, like, you know, they're the ones that are scaring off this generation. Like, you got that man or those people. I don't want to get into politics, but you've got bad examples on both sides, right? So kids are creating boundaries. You need people that are going to give them free education, free healthcare, because those two things give you comfort, give you security. You want to go home to see your mom and dad when you know that your education is paid for. You don't have to burden your parents for money, right? Maybe kids run away from home because they don't want to have that guilt. It's a system. It's not, I don't think it's humans. Humans just react to the environment and the systems that are beset. And it's a country where you've got greed, you've got unchecked, you know, privilege, you've got unchecked, you know, whatever you want to call it, right? But simultaneously, you've got like a sickened country where it's not looking after itself. Like, and why is it not looking after itself? Because no one wants to lend a hand, like Alex said, right? No one's helping each other.
Right.
Like, when so many people are homeless, why are you not opening your doors? Why aren't you letting people into your own houses and feeding them? Nobody wants to do that.
And that's the thing. It really has to be with kindness. I definitely disagree with you about the free healthcare and stuff. Nothing's free, but we could have that. That's a political discussion, which we're gonna.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that another day. But it's a good topic. I don't want to. We should talk about that eventually, but not today.
But let's let Rona get a take, and then Jody, if you would, please.
This is very. It's such a big topic, and I'm going to talk, and then I have to go, Jody. I'm going to leave you with all this testosterone. I think going back to the subject of happiness and boundaries, because we've gone so far from it, and we are an anomaly, I think, in the world, especially now. This country is so divisive, it's so broken, and people are in such a state of constant stress, constant fear. You know, I think they really need some company somewhere where there are coaches who could possibly help them. I don't know where they would go for anything like that. You know, and so I think people actually just need a little helping hand. They just seriously they need someone to be there. They just want to be heard, you know, and the boundaries are a protective device because they don't know how to say it sometimes.
Yeah, I want to say I'm not muted, right? So yeah, Rona, you make a great point. I think there's two things. One, I want to play off what Rona said, but also what Elijah said. Elijah was talking about a life example. So whoever's willing to share, everyone's got a personal story. It's like I'm trying to debate whether I should share it in my head. Probably
I'm gonna listen and then I'm gonna go. So
yeah, so what Rona was saying, yeah, what I think one thing is that internet culture has become dominant in the culture, and that means that it's so easy to cancel someone online. You just block them, you know, and you block them on your phone. And that blocking thing is like a binary. You're either blocked or unblocked. And it's not like there's no, when I'm in the house I live in a house with like 10 people in South America. It's a whole family. You can't block somebody, you know, it's like eventually you're going to run into them again. And so you can like, what do they call it when you shut them out, when you can't go no contact in the house. It just doesn't physically work. You can definitely shun someone for a couple days and just not talk to them when they say hello, but it's not going to last. And it's not really humanly possible to make that last. I had a roommate once, and this is 10, 15 years ago, and the roommate and I were on no talking terms. So we'd be in the kitchen and we wouldn't say anything to each other. And I don't know exactly why it started. I didn't start it, but that's how it ended up. So it's possible in a roommate situation to go almost no contact. But in general, it's like this internet culture of blocking people has made people like gun shy, or whatever the word is. They're now afraid of almost interaction because of the internet thing. And I don't know if it affects one demographic more than the other, but certainly I'm affected by just being afraid of saying something that's going to get me blocked, basically, you know, and that's spilled out into real life a little bit. I don't know if that's on topic, but basically I see that effect a little bit. Yeah, because so much of our social circles are controlled by our apps, then, you know, I think a lot of young people are in group chats, for example, in college or whatever. And, you know, if you got blocked from a group chat or whatever, it would be actually have real life effects in, you know, whether, you know, people have those. I'm not really a group chat person, but young people have a lot. And if you're blocked from the group chat, you're not invited to the next event. So it actually has real ramifications. So anyway, that's that. I can stop talking about that.
all right, I'm out, you guys.
All right, see you. Bye.
Yeah,
so jumping off of that, I think I want to kind of, I think, Hardeep, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think that what you were trying to talk about is best summed up by a quote from Justice Scalia here. He said, "The transformation of charity into legal entitlement has produced donors without love and recipients without gratitude." Right? So
absolutely. Listen, my background, just to give you guys a background, when me and Alex met, I was working pretty much on the Hill, working for a subsidiary of the USAID. And it's because my background was human rights, right? That's who I am, right? So trying to help each other through and through. And when I came to this country and I realized that when growing up thinking that, you know what, I want to go and help everyone, right? That utopian idea to save the world. And I managed to get myself to Washington, D.C. through my path of education, right? But when I got there, I was so saddened what I saw on the other side, you know, that whole saying of, you know, to change the system, you have to get in the system, not when the system is not going to change for anyone, right? So it's like, it's horrible. I don't want to go into it for whatever reasons, but I learned that, you know, charity does begin with action and ends with action, right? Unfortunately, and I've seen this happen I mean, in my own community, right, where there might be a noble cause. In fact, I guarantee you, if you were to track every natural disaster, every humanitarian crisis, past and present, you will find a non-profit organization that's bleeding that idea dry and lining up
Mhm.
their. That's a historical fact, right?
Mhm.
And religions have done that, institutions have done that, right?
Yeah.
Some people, unfortunately, prey off people's misery and pain, and that's just world kind, you know. So it's like, yeah, I think, I implore people to just like live by that platinum rule, and it's is to detach yourself from ego and just to empathy and just to like esteem everybody as if they're you. Like, would you hurt yourself? No. Would you treat yourself like that? No. How would you treat yourself? Right? Just exactly. That's how you treat everyone else, and that's my practice, man. And I think that's
So,
how I try my best to give, and I wish I can do more. Yeah.
and I think that the most important thing for this particular conversation about that topic, and that's something I'm very passionate about myself. But I think that what's important here is that it's because people are able to like have a safety net outside of the family, they kind of devalue the family. And then this is just the logical like endpoint of that. Whether that's good or bad. Some people say, well, that's fantastic. People don't need to be around abusive family members, right? Because they're not scared that they're going to fall on their butt in the street. And that's fine. That's a different conversation that we can have. Just, I think that Hardeep's main point, though, is that because we have the system, this is kind of like the logical end to it. I mean, I think that that's pretty much undeniable there. Whether or not that's good for bad, I would say it's for bad. Hardeep, I think, would say it's, I don't know, maybe everybody would say it's for bad on this panel. I'm not sure. But at least that's like a separate conversation, though. Now, what I think that is also important to talk about with this fact is that we don't realize, because we're living in these times, how fast things are changing and how humans like are really good at adapting. We actually are probably the best creatures in the history of our human knowledge, at least, at adapting. But adapting to these types of things so fast, right, is like really crazy. So just to put this in perspective, the human race is 300,000 years old, right? That's a very long time. Oh, yeah, you're right. Will's right. They could be 6,000 years old. We're not sure. But the human race, according to, these globers out there, right? The human,
Oh my gosh.
sorry. Will's not a flat earther. I'm just teasing. All right. So, but the human race is 300,000 years old.
A couple thousand years old at least. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, at least a couple thousand years.
Oh my gosh! All right, and we're finally.
But the point is that we have the situation. I'm sorry. What was that?
No, sorry. There's a little delay, but yeah, continue with your point, and then we're gonna
give. Okay. So we had this situation though where it wasn't very common 100 years ago to just leave the city you were born in. It really wasn't that common. People did it, but even going back 200 years ago, it was way less common than that. And going back 400 years ago, it almost never happened. You were born in a city, you lived in that city, and you died in that city. And then your son lived in that city, your daughter lived in that city, they died in that city, and your that's how it was for 300,000 years. Or I'm sorry, 299,000, whatever it is, 600 years, 299,600 years. And that's the exact date, by the way. So, no, but the point is that that's how it was. And now for the past 100 years, 200 years, now it's like everybody's like, oh, I want to go see the world. I want to go live in here. I want to live abroad for a year. I want to go live in New York for a year. I'm going to go, I'm patient zero for this. I've lived all over the place. But the point is, this is incredibly new. Before, you didn't just leave your family. You just didn't. You didn't leave your friends. And so humans evolved to be next to the same people all the time. And when we get into this place where cutting off people is a luxury, even if you look at like the social safety net, enabling people to break away from their families. And in some cases, that's probably very good if their family's very abusive and they would otherwise have to stay if they didn't have a social safety net, right? Like you can look at that situation. And it's like, that's a luxury to be able to leave that abusive family. Some people don't have that luxury, by the way, but even today, but that luxury is becoming way more broadly available. And we don't know how to handle it as a species, and we haven't properly evolved for it. And I think that this is causing a lot of the negative outcomes, and we just frankly don't know how to handle this. And then when you add that aspect to like dealing with screen time and social media and all these other views, like again, nobody ever talked about cutting. When I was a kid, the only time people talked about cutting off family members were when parents cut off their gay children. That was the only time we ever talked about it. That was it, right? Now it's like that's the rarest thing that happens in our society. That's the rarest kind of cutoff. We have people cutting off brothers and sisters and uncles and all this other stuff. I have family members that have cut off my dad because of his posts on social media. I'm not joking. So the whole point, though, is that, this is new in, I don't think that our biology or even our traditions or our culture is prepared to deal with this problem.
Yeah, I wanted to step in and right on that. I want Jody to weigh in again, but just to dovetail on what Elijah was saying, I think right now, culturally, because of the internet, you can look at the workplace as an example. I think the loyalty in the workplace has gone down in the last 30 years. And like firing someone or leaving a job abruptly is almost, to me, it's akin to setting some sort of boundary. And so we see less loyalty there. And I think because of the internet, there's either an illusion of choice or true choice in that, I don't need you, I can go to someone else. So like, to me, that it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's morally, it depends on the situation. It's morally neutral. Like we may or may not, but I think we generally have more choice in society, or at least the illusion of choice. I don't think true choice is actually existing. It's an illusion of choice. And that illusion of choice leads people to set these boundaries that are actually unhealthy, right? Because there's only so much time in the day for each person, and we can only do so much connection. And so when we feel like we have a better option, we actually don't necessarily have a better option. There's an illusion that we have a better option. And so we end up blocking off people like our parents. We only have two parents. We don't have more than that. So when you lose a parent, the parent blocks their kids, it's actually really damaging. But you wonder if someone chooses to block someone, if there really was better, better outcome. It really heavily depends. That's why this topic is so hard to tease apart. It really depends. But in my opinion, there's a better way when people are better socialized. You can prevent the arrival to the breaking point, right? Once you get to the point where so much damage is done, it might be better just to sever ties, right? But it's like, how do we get to that? How do we prevent ourselves from getting to that point where things got so bad that the best thing to do is to block or to set up a boundary that was that severe? Now, but that's jumping, like boundary setting isn't just blocking someone for life, right? Cutting them off, so to speak. Boundary setting can be more healthy. It can be more, I guess, smaller steps. You don't have to just cut someone out of your life completely, right? So I think boundary setting is perfectly healthy when done judiciously early on, setting expectations. I think that's fine. So it's really a dance. I don't think there's an easy way to tease this apart, but I'll stop there. Let's go back to Jody. I think Jody can bring us back to center.
I definitely agree with what you just said. There's shades of gray with boundary setting. And the conversation of this is why I'm hurt, or this is what I expect in our relationship, that I believe is healthy. But cutting somebody off is not kind, what somebody on the panel said earlier. I'm not sure who. And we should all be treating each other the way we'd like to be treated. The golden rule, right?
Yeah. Deep was saying that. I do think, I think it's a symptom. The shutting people off. There are toxic people. There are toxic personalities.
Of course.
There's personality disorders. And nowadays it's a positive effect of the internet, but because it's somewhat easier on paper to find a new connection in life. If someone's treating you poorly, you can just be like, hey, look, this is suboptimal for me, I'm out. But with parents and family members, it's different because those aren't replaceable. So I think there's a big distinction. But it is definitely, I would say it's, on one hand, there's a dominance play with boundary setting. On the other hand, there's like an antisocial aspect where antisocial people use boundaries, and there's a pro-social aspect where pro-social people do set boundaries. And I think like my younger sister and I disagree. Like I have an older sister who I get along with very well. My younger sister and I don't get along on politics, and she blocked like in long before Trump. This is 2010, 2008, like a long time ago. She blocked me on Facebook, and I was hurt by that. And eventually, I refriended her on Facebook, and we talk like once a month on the phone. We were never that close after high school. And then she blocked me again on Facebook, and then I think I refriended her like 2 years later on Facebook. And then finally around 2018, right? That was the last time we ever interacted online ever. I mean, we blocked each other and everything. She mostly blocked me. But again, I get along with my parents, with my older sister. And so she and I don't talk anymore. I have no interest in talking to her. She's got no interest in talking to me. We effectively set that boundary. And I literally I frankly don't think about my younger sister. I got so many other things to think about. My older sister and I get along fine. My older sister's just in a different part of her life. She's 5 years older, and my younger sister's about 3 years younger. But it's just interesting to see that. And that's the only family member that I ever had that problem with. And I don't want to say anything bad about my younger sister per se, but it's just like the net effect was probably neutral at best. It would be better to have that connection. I think she made mistakes. And made some wrong choices. And I'm not the only person on the bad end of her personality, let's say, so I don't take it personally that she and I couldn't get along, but in another universe, on another timeline, I wish we could have done a better job of connecting, but it might have just been inevitable that we disagreed about things. And it's okay because she's got her own life. She's fine. I got my own life. I'm fine. And, better maybe to not disagree. I don't know, but family is very different than friends. They say you can choose your friends, you can't choose your family. And that's true. I think families should try to get along better. But the illusion of having family outside the home might just be an illusion. I don't know.
And I would warn people that are thinking about defooing or cutting people off that, yes, there are good times to do it, but there are consequences for it, and you may not foresee them. So, we could all agree probably that the tradition, at least in Western society, but probably worldwide, is basically the common thing was like, well, they're family. You don't cut off family. I think that it used to be like a big taboo to do that, right? And so, I like what Jordan Peterson says about tradition, right? Tradition is a set of solutions for which we have forgotten the problems. And when you get rid of those traditions, the problems come back, right? And so, again, you can shirk tradition and stuff in the way that people have done things for thousands of years if you want, but you do so at your own peril, right? Another good quote, and this is a nerdy quote, so I won't tell the source, but it has been said that tradition is the corpse of wisdom. And I think that's very, very true. But you can toss out the corpse of wisdom all you want because it's just the corpse. But you better do an autopsy, right? Because if you don't do an autopsy first and you don't fully understand what you're throwing out, you're going to have problems down the line. It's totally okay to get rid of the tradition as long as you build up a bulwark against whatever problems that tradition was in place to stop. And so I think that that's just really, really important. So I'd warn, think about the consequences. And again, you don't have to turn off the TV if it's too loud. You can turn it down. That said, if you really feel like, look, this relationship is not salvageable, it's really interfering with my mental health, I think that cutting off a family member or a friend is something that you should definitely think about. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying take it very seriously and really analyze the problem. Talk to somebody maybe about it. Talk to many people about it, especially people that know both of you. I know those can be awkward situations, having a conversation like that, but I think it will be worth it in the long run. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I would caveat that and say think about it for a very long time and experiment with periods of silence and see how, if you feel better after a month or two. And you don't have to, I mean, I guess you can always unblock someone, but sometimes the damage is done with the other. It just becomes, it's a two-person dynamic situation. So they may feel shunned and hurt, and then they won't respond kindly to your shunning. And it's a very complicated situation. I think people, in general, my opinion is that people need to learn how to be social. We're social animals, and we learn in childhood. And people have some childhood, I don't want to say trauma because overused, but like they have some childhood, like sometimes it's a lack of socialization. I think one of the things I put in the chat is there's fewer siblings. And so fewer siblings in the younger generations means they just have less kind of that rough and tumble play where you learn about boundaries, physical and emotional, and you know what not to say when, and you know what to do when, not to do when. I have, cousins here, and I see them learning in real time. Don't say that thing because that's going to hurt their feelings at that time, or do say that thing to encourage them, right? There's words of affirmation we can use in real time to encourage good behavior that's pro-social and to discourage bad behavior. And I just think with the internet and fewer siblings, and I don't know if we're more transient now than we were 2,000 years ago. We have had nomadic cultures, but there's a lot of factors that are at play here. And so it's it's a great topic, Jody, because it is so complicated. But Will and Eli, we can always weave in that this is a coaching company. If you're really contemplating a relationship that you have, it could be with your parents, your boss, your kids, your partner, colleagues, whatever. If you're contemplating about establishing more boundaries, or maybe disintegrating a boundary that you once set, and how to reacquaint yourself with someone, it's a really tough topic. And Dancing Dragons has people that will help you with that. We are like a neutral third party, a coach, a mentor, an advisor to help you with your relationships. Relationships are of utmost importance to people. So, to plug the company, to plug the service, absolutely think about a life coach to help you with this stuff. It's not easy. You can tell all of us are struggling to wrap our heads around the idea of boundaries. It's a pro-social and anti-social mechanism. And so it is a complex topic, and that's why it takes teasing out. But I'll stop there. Will, maybe redirect the conversation.
Yeah, we're coming up a little over an hour here. I want to give the floor in the final segment here to Jody. Before I do, make sure you like and subscribe. Leave us a comment, even if you're not watching this live later. That definitely helps us out. Share us on your social media, email, put us up on Facebook, and just check out the website that's going to be in the description of this video here. Check it out and kind of get used to it. See who the coaches are. We offer a wide array of coaches on a wide variety of subjects. But yeah, Jody, if you could kind of end us out here, kind of give us your original thesis, any other points that we miss, and again, thank you very much for joining. Sorry, we kind of talked over you a little bit today, but you're always welcome any week. And
yeah, we can keep it going. We got another half an hour if everyone wants to stay. But yeah.
Well, first, I just want to thank you guys for having such an open discussion and for bringing so much wisdom to the conversation, and lack of emotions. Even though we all had our own personal stories, it seemed we were able to keep that in the back and really just hash it out with facts and information, as opposed to feelings. So I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that somehow I have 3% left battery and I survived this.
Yeah. Good work. Good work device. Yeah. Yes, very good. So yeah, I think Jody had some really good, like a good thesis. If going back to the original thesis, it was something like, why do people, it's a question, right? And an answer. Why do people set boundaries? Is it for selfish reasons? Is it for group cohesion? Boundaries are really important. Like you can kind of reward someone with more attention, and you can punish them with less attention, right? Everybody sees that, right? So if someone is doing what we want, we will give them more attention, more reward. If they're doing something we don't want, we will kind of punish them with that boundary, with like silent treatment was the word I was looking for earlier. It escaped my mind. But that silent treatment is common in relationships where I don't respond as fast when you talk to me. I don't acknowledge you, or what's the word? There's another word escaping me, but it's mirroring, right? When you give someone a positive feedback when they say something, or so boundaries. I personally think today we are too enraptured in boundary setting too soon. And I see as people, and I can see this scientifically because as I see people age, I see them mature in their communication, whether it's on email or LinkedIn or texting or in verbal conversation. Older people tend to be more emotionally regulated, and they're less judgmental. They're less quick to play social games where they're playing with they're playing with people's emotions when it comes to am I gonna let you keep talking to me, or is this relationship over? Kind of feeling like, do you have my attention or not? All these games that we play. I see people as they age get a little bit more mature around that, and they don't play those games. So it's like, you still have to play social games, right? Life is a game that we play, but I do think that as people get older and wiser, the people that you should expect less game playing, right? If you're with someone who's older and older and they don't stop playing those games, it's probably a sign that they're never going to stop, and they might not be a healthy person, right? When you're younger than 20 or 25, I think you're more susceptible to the antisocial behavior around boundaries and playing with people's emotions by, attention versus withdrawing attention and giving attention, and those Pavlovian tricks that we play with each other. But I would say boundaries are, if you're setting boundaries when you're older, then it's actually fine. Like, I just trust people's judgment after 30 or 40. If you're setting a boundary after 30 or 35 or 40, it's probably okay. If you're setting boundaries when you're younger, maybe because you're absolutely desperate to get rid of a toxic parent. There's some really severely toxic child-parent relationships that it's like I'm hardly privy to, but I've heard of, and it does sound terrible. So you got to get rid of your parent or your child. Some children are really bad too. I was Googling disinheritance, and if you go to ChatGPT and you look up reasons why children get disinherited by their parents, really interesting. But Elijah nailed it. A lot of times it was their children were gay, right? That was a big one for a long time.
That was basically all we ever talked about, like cutting off family members. That was the only time.
Yeah, so this is a discussion worthy of another show, but it's like we almost need to tease apart family boundaries versus outside the family, because to me, they are very different. When you're setting boundaries with family members, it's a very different dynamic than setting boundaries with outside the family. But when I chat GPT, I said, why did parents disinherit their children? Disapproval of lifestyle choices. One reason, Elijah, is that someone married the wrong person, right? So the mother-in-law or the father-in-law, they don't like the spouse, the choice. That's common. And that could be gay or straight. Religious choices. Some people lose their religion and they go secular, or they don't like that, or vice versa. Another reason, money has to be here somewhere. Perceived disrespect. whatever it may be. It could be political. If the child is probably a repeat criminal, can't stay out of prison. Like when the child becomes a violent criminal and starts threatening the family for money or extort, that's a clear case of like, you got to get rid of this kid,
criminality.
Yeah, criminality would be one. This thing doesn't talk about money. But if like a child, I mean, you can always choose not to give your kid money. I guess kids can be a money pit, or I don't know. Like, there's something I'm missing here. Why would
I feel like there would always be something else like that, though. Like it would always be like lifestyle choice. Like that would probably fall under lifestyle choice. Like they're a drug addict, lifestyle choice.
Right, exactly. If they keep asking for money and they can't keep themselves off the street, it's like, it's better if I don't help you, because I'm just at this point, by not setting that boundary, I'm actually just enabling you, right? So it keeps coming back to me. Boundary setting is both pro-social, anti-social. I think Jody brought a really good question to the floor in the topic for today. It's just, why do people set boundaries? In the beginning, I was saying that boundary setting is oftentimes a dominance play, and it's a way for people in a strong position to control the people in a weaker position, so to speak. But it's not always like that. Sometimes the weaker position has to set a boundary to prevent being used by someone in a stronger position,
I wanted to bring that up because you kept using the term boundary setting when we were really talking about cutting people off. And so I just want to make sure that you understand there can be a lot lesser of a boundary. Like, hey, don't call me jerk. That's a boundary. And so younger people make boundaries, just don't cut people off so willy-nilly. I think that's what they do.
Yeah,
I just wanted to delineate that. I knew what you meant. I just wanted to make sure that people understood.
That's true.
What I would say is, I had a really good thing to bring up there. I lost it. So, Will, how about you give your closing statement?
What you're saying is the difference between boundary setting and cutting someone off. And I was saying earlier in the conversation, maybe part of the answer until we get it's like a step by step till we get to the point where cutting someone off is the right choice. But maybe before we get there's some boundary setting that should happen before we actually block them on the phone, right? That's what
I remember what I was. I remember what I
talked. It was going to remind you. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, thank you. So, I did want to kind of also recall the comment about kids, right? And again, this is coming, and this might make some people upset. Understand? I'm not giving anybody, orders to live your life. This is just my opinion, right? So take it or leave it. Maybe it's a bad opinion to you. Maybe it's a good opinion. But I truly feel if there's ever a problem between a parent and a child, it's the parent's fault. Ultimately, it's the parent's fault. Okay? You're their parent, right? So now you could say like, hey, I didn't really raise them. And it's like, well, that's your fault. Okay? Like you got taken out of your child's life for some reason. That's your fault. You weren't there for them. And they'd be like, well, I didn't know, like the mom wouldn't let me see them or the dad wouldn't let me see them. It's like, well, that's your fault. Like you had a child, you chose to have a child with somebody. Like you bear responsibility for anything your child does. And so I do not think it's ever ethical to just cut your child off. Now, it might be the best thing for your mental health to cut your child off, right?
Right.
But it's not, I do not find it to ever be ethical to cut your child off. If your child is terrible, it is your duty in life to help them get back to a non-terrible place. That is my very strong stance.
I tend to agree.
I just wanted to say that, and I'll leave that like.
No, I think that's true. I think that's a good philosophy. I have stuff to say, but Will or Jody, you can step in first.
Go ahead, Will.
Sorry, it's freezing up here. I just want to leave with this final thought, which is, well, I'm going to continue saying this too, is, if you got a certain malady, you're going to go to a doctor, maybe get even a second opinion or two. Same thing, if you want to learn how to be a businessman, you're going to open up Think and Grow Rich, and you're going to maybe look for a mentor in that field. If you get in trouble with the law, you're going to get yourself a lawyer. And now they've got stuff out there like the Masterclass where Bill Clinton and Jerry Seinfeld can teach you how to do jokes. Well, we're offering something a little bit cooler. This is an expert that's tailor-made to you and what you want to accomplish. So, I mean, you take care of your insides, you're eating healthy food, right? So you only got one life that we know of right now, at least that most of us can remember. So I'd say take advantage of it, find the links in the description. Start thinking about these topics that we're broaching on a weekly basis in yourself. Think about how we can better you, right? So start thinking about those things, find some links in the description, and yeah, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And also we'll be back here live next Monday and every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you tune in and tell other folks.
Very good. That's a good way to close out. I think we'll end on that note. Thank you, Jody, for being a guest. You're welcome back next week or the week after. This is a big topic. It's really hard to tease it apart in 1 hour. Even 10 hours would take. We would not be able to tease it apart. But we're getting closer to it, and it's a discussion. It's a discussion. There's no easy answer. So, thank you all for joining. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week, same time.
Remember, be excellent to each other, everybody. Peace.